Hello friends, you are on the Ruslan Belov channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine as of March 18th, 2025. A tremendous number of events have taken place today, so let's get started. Well, now we will move to the front line, and of course, the most interesting news today is coming even from Belgorod. Since early morning, pro-Russian and pro-Ukrainian channels have been publishing information one after another about the Ukrainian armed forces attempting several offensives into the territory of the Russian Federation, specifically on the border between the Kursk and Belgorod regions. To be more precise, the strikes were directed towards the settlements of Demidovka, Grafovka, and Prelesia. Since early morning, there has been information that the offensive began at 7 a.m., involving several assault groups, units of equipment, and engineering vehicles tasked with clearing mines and creating breaches in the minefields to allow Ukrainian units to advance deeper into Russian territory. This was the initial information, the first analysis of what was happening. Throughout the day, more and more information came in. Maps were drawn, and the units participating in the battles were identified. By the end of the day, it was concluded that the Ukrainian side aimed to reach the asphalt road northeast of the settlement of Marina, to then develop the offensive along the asphalt road with fast mobile groups further east, possibly attempting to replicate the situation that occurred in August 2024 during the Sudzha offensive by the Ukrainian armed forces. However, we can see that by the end of the first day of fighting, whether there will be subsequent days is hard to say, but by the end of the first day, the Ukrainian army was halted, a significant amount of equipment was destroyed, and the Ukrainians have now retreated from the state border. At least if we compare the breakthrough attempt in the Belgorod region with the one in the Sudzha district, by this point, at the end of the first day, there were already a huge number of geolocations far beyond Sudzha, and the situation there unfolded quite differently. Here, we see that most likely, not only the lack of objective control footage, but the entire atmosphere confirms that this offensive has failed. As for the Sudzha salient, today is likely the first day. Yes, today, March 18th, is the first day of the Russian counter-offensive, the start of the Russian special operation conducted through Gazprom's pipelines. For the first time, we are not adjusting the map at all. That is, we are not adjusting the map of the Sudzha district. If in previous days there were some adjustments by neutral or pro-Russian cartographers, today there are none at all, which tells us that the offensive has slowed down significantly. The Russian army is approaching the defensive lines in the Sumy region. Pay attention to the stronghold. This stronghold is already facing Russian units somewhere along the state border. Of course, such strongholds, which are essentially underground, are very difficult to assault, and a rapid advance should not be expected. There is also information that for several days in a row, the Russian army has been clearing the settlement of Sudzha. A huge number of images of captured Leopards, Bradleys, Max Pros, Kirpis, and other Western-made equipment have been published, showing how this equipment is being evacuated to the rear, possibly to Russian engineers who may later attempt to use Western developments to improve Russian technology. But in any case, we can see that the offensive is slowing down. There is a minor adjustment in the area of the settlement of Basovka. Ukrainian sources have published footage of FPV drone strikes. On the very southwestern outskirts of this village, based on this footage, we have concluded that at least the western part of the river, the western part of Basovka along the Lochnia River, has been completely cleared by Russian units. There is no information yet on whether Russian units have managed to cross the river and secure a foothold on the eastern side. But it seems likely that this may happen soon. The Russian side continues to strike the main supply routes still used by Ukrainian units to maintain their grouping along the state border. In general, some sources report that the slowdown in the offensive is primarily due to the fact that a large number of Russian armed forces personnel are involved in clearing Sudzha. That is, they cannot move forward yet. The city came under Russian control very quickly. A significant number of buildings and housing stock were preserved. More than 70% remained either untouched or requiring minor repairs. Therefore, there is a lot of work to be done, and only after the final clearing will Russian units possibly move forward. Additionally, from the direction of the Sumy settlement, possibly for the first time since the beginning of the special military operation, very clear footage has been published, which even managed to geolocate a Ukrainian F-16. This F-16, as you can see, is flying over the Sumy settlement, practically along the line of contact. Sources report that these F-16s today supported the offensive of the Ukrainian armed forces aimed at breaking through the Belgorod border along the Belgorod region. These F-16s struck Russian positions using so-called falling bombs, as they are called. Now let's move to the Kharkiv direction. Today, a lot of information is coming in that Russian intelligence has detected a massive concentration of personnel and equipment of the Ukrainian armed forces in the areas of Zolochiv and Kharkiv. It is possible that in the near future, the Ukrainian side will attempt to breach the defenses of the Russian armed forces in the Belgorod settlement area to replicate the Sudzha scenario. Well, we will observe how this story ends. Next, we move to the Chasiv Yar, Konstantinovka, and Toretsk directions. Today, this section of the front is receiving the most adjustments to the front line. It is worth noting that the Russian army has begun gradually clearing the pocket between the settlements of Chasiv Yar and Toretsk. We haven't seen footage of the Russian army advancing in columns for quite some time. Probably we haven't seen anything like this for about 2 weeks. We've been discussing the Sudzha counter-offensive for 2 weeks. And today, after a 10-day pause, so to speak, today is March 18th, marking 10 days since the start of the Sudzha operation, we are possibly seeing for the first time in a while objective control footage showing Russian units attempting to attack Ukrainian positions using columns of heavy equipment, tanks, infantry fighting vehicles, and so on. Based on several geolocations, there have been significant changes to the map. Here's how the map looked yesterday, by the end of the day, and today we see advances. All the footage published over the past 24 hours indicates that the Russian army is attempting to advance towards the settlement of Dylivka, say from the pocket near the settlement of Mayorsk, further in a northwesterly direction. That is, we can see that there is now an attempt to cut off this salient by the center group of forces, after which the Russian army will closely approach Belaya Gora, Alexandra Shultin, and of course the Klebanbik Reservoir, where today the Russian army also used FABs, striking positions of the Ukrainian armed forces. So we can see that there is serious intensification of combat operations here. Perhaps some of the first reinforcements for the Sudzha salient have returned. The Russian side has managed to catch its breath, and now military operations to advance in the northern direction are resuming. Also, from this same section of the front, the Konstantinovka direction, footage has emerged showing Russian units clearing positions in the area of the settlement of Alexandropol. That is, we see that movement has also begun in this pocket along the H20 highway, again heading north towards the Klebanbik Reservoir and Konstantinovka itself. So today this is a very active section of the front. If we talk about the Pokrovsk line further south towards Bogatyr, there have been no significant changes here. I remind you that in recent weeks, the Ukrainian side has repeatedly counterattacked here, even partially regaining control over certain positions. But we see that today, by the end of March 18th, on certain sections of the front, the Russian army has managed to fully restore all lost positions. Shevchenko is now almost entirely under Russian control, and more geolocations are coming in from the settlement of Kotlina, confirming the restoration of control over this section of the front. There is also more and more information from Uspanovka, and we can see how Russian drones are gradually flying far to the west of the Uspanovka settlement. Today, by the way, there were multiple publications on the internet and Telegram channels suggesting that, possibly for the first time since the start of hostilities in this section of the front, the first drones have begun to enter the territory of the Dnipropetrovsk region. That is, we can see that Russian army drones are now operating in the area of the Novopodgorodnoye settlement. Strikes were carried out on Ukrainian equipment, and strikes were also made on small forest belts in the Marievka area. But this is already Dnipro, meaning a completely new region. We can see that gradually the fighting is spilling over beyond the borders of the Donetsk region. There is also information about the gradual erosion of the grey zone towards Bogatyr, meaning the noose around the Bogatyr direction is also tightening. And, of course, the Zaporizhzhia direction. Today there are many reports of flags. We can see advances confirmed by both pro-Russian and pro-Ukrainian services. There is information about Shcherbaki, Mali Shcherbaki, and Stepov, and there is even objective control footage confirming the presence of Russian soldiers in this section of the front. but without further advances. That is, of course, the big question is how the Russian army envisions further progress. There are separate resources on the internet where one can observe the defensive lines of the Ukrainian armed forces. Here on your screens is a layered defensive line, the echelon defense of the Ukrainian armed forces in the Zaporizhzhia direction. Here, the Russian army is still at some zero line, with at least 3 to 4 more lines ahead before reaching the main defensive line of the city of Zaporizhzhia itself. So, I repeat the thought we discussed yesterday. I do not see any major, large-scale offensive here, because if an offensive were to take place here, it would need to be conducted at the level of the Sudzha operation, as grinding through all these lines could take possibly more than a year. And that's all, dear friends. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel, leave your likes, and all the best to you.